Well, gender equality issues have been ongoing in NUI Galway. In UCG, as it was when I joined in 1980, there were very few women. There were few women professors, but actually very few junior staff as well. But the HEA, towards the end of the 80s, looked for a report for the universities as to what was gender balance and where were women in universities. And I was on the Equality Committee that did this report. And we did research into the positions of women in all the universities in Ireland, and we found that UCG was the least good. We were the bottom of the heap. So back then, we made some recommendations. We said there should be some kind of addressing of the balance, and there should be maybe even a quota system. But a lot of those recommendations still haven't been put in place. So there's an ongoing problem with gender balance in terms of academics. There are more women academics, but the position of female senior staff is still the worst in Ireland. The HEA figures, which came out last November in 2014, showed that NUI Galway is still bottom of the heap relative to the other universities. And in fact, when I took my case, I found that 84% of the staff, senior staff at senior lecturer and above, are male, and in 53% of the junior staff were female. And this kind of gives rise to the glass ceiling index, which is an index of the proportion of senior females versus to those that are in junior positions. And a report, an EU report, showed that Ireland was second last in Europe. It had the second highest glass ceiling index in all of Europe, including Israel and Iceland, so not just the EU. So that potentially shows that NUI Galway is perhaps the second last, because Malta was the worst, and Malta has only one university. So we really have a very bad record, and we have improved in terms of numbers, but not in terms of proportion of senior staff. So when I went for promotion, I went for promotion several times, and I was actually deemed eligible, shortlisted and deemed eligible in 2007, but ranked too low to be promoted. And then the second time I was deemed eligible was in 2009, and I still hadn't been ranked high enough to be promoted. And I found out that there was only one woman promoted out of the whole 17. And in fact, it wasn't for lack of candidates, because this was 6% of the female candidates. There were 15 female candidates. And yet 50%, of the 32 male candidates, 16 of them were promoted. So the rate of promotion of females was worse, and had been. I found out that over all the years, that each time the percentage of female candidates promoted was less than the percentage of male candidates promoted. So there was clearly an imbalance here, and it was one of the points that I made in my case, and it was actually picked up in the ruling. The equality officer said that looking at the statistics throughout the years, the women had less than 1 in 3 chance of being promoted, and the men had a 1 in 2 chance. So in other words, we have a less chance proportionate over all the years. Of course, 2009 was very much the worst. It was the worst over the past, and it's picked up a little bit since, but it's not that good. My case was about academics, but also there are many other sectors in the university, and I can only talk about academics, but I do know, for example, that there's only ever been, as far as I know, 1 senior female technician. So in technical staff, there are very few senior females, administrative staff again, and the ground staff. So there's a lot to be addressed. It's not just the academics. So the ruling in the tribunal also produced a lot of statements. One of the things was it said that there was a lack of transparency in the whole process. She found out, established that one of the candidates wasn't even eligible to be promoted. So I think this was one of the reasons she called it a ramshackle process. So there were actually 5 women as well as myself who were not promoted that time. There was 1 woman, and it turned out that woman was ranked 17th out of 17. So the 16 men were above us all. And those 5 women are taking a case. They've appealed, they can't appeal under the processes in the university, so they have no choice but to go to the High Court. Because of the statute of limitations, they can't go to the Circuit Court. They have to go to the High Court. It's really important to contest these matters. If you don't highlight this, a lot of information came out during the tribunal, and indeed a lot that I found out did not come out in the tribunal and will come out in the High Court cases. But people begin to realise the position. Like the students, for example, there's a lot of students in the campaign, which is supporting the five, had no idea that their female staff were actually in those junior positions. And a lot of them signed up and mentioned each one of the five in turn, or myself, and they've said, she's the best lecturer I ever had. She was really inspiring. We go to, their lectures, even if I'm not interested in the subject, just to go to it. So they were flabbergasted that the women in question were not promoted. So there's a big student gathering. The Feminist Society reconvened, and is running it, but they also have the support of 30 other societies. So there's a big groundswell of student support, and the Students' Union has also passed a motion which means it's supporting the campaign as well. I think it's important to highlight the issues and to broaden them out as well. We're focusing on the five women for now because they're implicated in this ramshackle process, which was 2009. But clearly we need to address wider issues and the technical staff and the other sectors in the university. And I'd hope that it would also inspire women and indeed everybody to look at how things are going in other universities. Because I think one of the things that was highlighted in the tribunal, and I think is really important, is transparency. Well, I started off taking the case because I was a bit mad, to be honest, to be told I was eligible for a second time and yet I wasn't going to be promoted. But certainly what would have inspired me would be my ancestry. My grandmother, Hannah Sheehy Skeffington, was a suffragette. She went to prison for her views, and indeed Francis, her husband, also went to prison for his views, and he resigned his job as registrar in a university because he continued to fight for the equality of women within the Royal University, which was UCD. UCD was called then. So they had very strong principles and they were prepared to lose their jobs. Hannah lost her job when she came out of prison. So this kind of, I felt, well, if I didn't take this case, what would Hannah and Frank say? So I felt obliged to do it. And I think for me personally, that was a really important role to kind of bring forward and bring up. It's incidentally one of the first things that my grandfather Francis published was a small pamphlet, which is famous because he published it with James Joyce. Both of them were rejected at the student magazine, and Francis's title was A Forgotten Aspect of the University Question. And I'm taking that a little bit further. He wanted women to attend lectures and have equal opportunities within the university, but I'm saying also within the staff we have to take it further forward. Well, I'm delighted to be able to have the opportunity to say this. I really regret not being at the school, and there's a great lineup, and of course the name Sheehy Skeffington School. So I think it is important because it's a human rights issue. I mean, feminism and women's rights is a human right. So I think it's important that the school learns a little bit about the background. This is the details of one case, but I hope it is labelled as a landmark case, and I think it might inspire people attending the school and beyond to perhaps look at their own situations, maybe take action or support other women and support other people indeed in positions where they feel they're being oppressed or misrepresented.